Keith Myers is a senior consultant, professional services for Shipware. Prior to joining Shipware, Keith was a senior pricing advisor at FedEx, where he gained direct carrier pricing experience. In his 7 years at FedEx, he created and analyzed parcel and LTL pricing for accounts as large as $100 million. He also has worked in logistics as an analyst at Hamanetics and Bose Corporation, giving him almost 20 years of experience in the logistics and transportation industry. Josh Fredman joins us as head of operations at Better Trucks, one of the fastest growing last mile parcel delivery and logistics firms in the nation. Prior to joining the Better Trucks team 2 years ago, Josh spent over a decade with United, helping them with everything from operations and planning to customer experience to partners and alliances. And I'm your host, Denise McCann, founder of Renegade Logistics Group. We're a consulting group and a 4PL and work extensively with Better Trucks. We're going to cover a wide range of topics today as transportation leaders and shippers start to analyze their peak performance and plans for the year ahead. On the surface, we're looking at the biggest price increases we've ever seen, 6.9%. How should shippers feel about these price increases this year?
Yeah, thanks, Denise. If I'm a shipper, I'm pretty upset that the increase is, a record 6.9%. It's never been that high in history. There were a couple of times in the early 2000s where it was close to that, but it was offset with a change in the fuel surcharge table. None of that happened this year. It's just a straight 6.9% increase that FedEx made. FedEx announced first. And I would be shocked if UPS was planning a 6.9% increase. I'm pretty confident that they were looking at a 5.9% increase until FedEx made their announcement. And then UPS, since it's a duopoly, said, well, there's no reason for us to do something different, so we're going to match that 6.9%. And the surcharges are the same way, like you touched on. That 6.9% doesn't include surcharges, and the key ones that affect your typical e-commerce shippers are going up by more than that 6.9%. Now, residential is going up by 8%, a little bit higher. Some of the delivery area surcharges are going up close to 10%. Additional handling is going up double figures as well. Some of those are pushing 20%. They've gone zone-based, so there's a lot of moving parts for shippers, and it's frustrating trying to manage that, trying to budget for it, and then having these, probably for a lot of shippers, it's a double-digit increase year over year for their freight costs.
Oh, absolutely. Before we get into what the actual rate increases look like, because a flat 6.9 is certainly isn't in all respects a flat 6.9. So Keith, I'd like to come back to the actual just explain to us, the average shipper says, I got a 6.9, I'm going to apply that across all of my transportation costs. What does it really mean?
It's not a linear thing. That 6.9% is on average. So like if you take the rates and average them all together year over year, then yes, you get 6.9%. But within each individual cell, those increases vary. And so you really have to get in and really analyze your shipping profile, understand your data, and essentially re-rate your packages, saying, okay, with 2022, I paid this much, but with this discount and this, and these rates in 2023, I'm going to pay that, so that you can understand what that increase is. And then you've got to fold the surcharges in on top of that.
As a regional carrier, what's your take on the across the board rate increases?
Yeah, Denise, good question. Thanks for having us today. And Keith, great to talk with you as always. I think for folks like us in the regional space, there's a lot of opportunity. We try to keep our pricing very simplified, and we think that that's an advantage to the shipper and to the industry. And so, the duopoly that Keith speaks to, they've been around doing the same thing for decades upon decades, and in the regional space and in the space that Better Trucks plays in, we see simplified pricing as well as better tech as ways to improve the customer experience and to get parcels to customers faster.
Keith, so with rate and time in transit being very important, primarily the two biggest factors when it comes to choosing a carrier, how do you advise clients to think about how to optimize their carrier selections?
Part of getting to that point is understanding your customer requirements. Do your customers understand that, all right, if I'm getting free shipping, then I know it's going to come the slowest way possible. And then you can use a ground economy SurePost type service as opposed to a FedEx home delivery or ground residential service. The transit time's a little bit slower, the cost is less. Or is it the other way where your customers are, it's that Amazon, like I need to get this, tomorrow or within 2 days or whatever, then that pushes you to a different level of service. So that's kind of the extra variable on top of, the rates and kind of looking at the transit times is marrying that up with what your customers actually require.
So Josh, when you think about matchmaking with a prospective client, what factors do you discuss early on in the conversation that give you a good indication that there's a solid fit with Better Trucks?
We typically cover more territory on a next day and 2 day basis than the ground providers in the national space. So an example of that, within the Better Trucks network is, Chicago to Minneapolis or Chicago to Detroit as an example, where those are next day transit for us. And with, the national carriers ground service, it's a 2 day transit. That's one piece. And then the other piece that, I think is really important to note here is, we at Better Trucks function and look very similar to a national carrier in terms of the services that we provide. So our network is completely connected across all of the metros that we serve and will continue to be as we grow into next year. And, from that standpoint, the service that we provide is very, very similar to a UPS or FedEx picking up packages at a customer's dock and getting it to the end customer, regardless of, what metro they live in or where the package is headed. So
what's your sweet spot on vertical markets? What's your dream client?
We look at ourselves as very opportunistic in the fact that we can help small businesses all the way up to some of the largest parcel shippers in the country.
What's something that you think transportation leaders should be considering or taking better advantage of in this next year ahead when diversifying their carriers?
Yeah, so I think that everybody wants to save costs. Everybody wants to improve their customer experience. I think that from a customer experience perspective, for not only the shippers but the clients that they ship to, that Better Trucks is making the delivery for, the level of technology, the way of the better engagement that we offer compared to the national carriers is something that is desired. And so I like to equate our delivery technology to that of like a DoorDash or Uber. If you're waiting for your Uber to come, you can look at a map and see where the driver is. You can look at a map and see, where your pizza delivery guy is. We have that same technology. It's standard for all of our customers and all of our deliveries, and it helps improve the customer experience and drive, better successful delivery rates. And so if you're a transportation leader and maybe you're not thinking about the types of technology advancements that regionals, especially Better Trucks, offer, I think that that's worth the conversation. And I think that you'll find that there's a lot of upside potential relative to the national carriers.
I'm going to throw this next question out to either of you, Keith or Josh. This is what I would run into when you tell UPS or FedEx that you're looking to optimize your transportation spend. Each one of them goes, you're going to nullify your contract and your rates are going to go up. How do you, and you've seen this 1,000 times, right? How do you sell through that or show the value add when those large shippers hear that?
Typically, the volume threshold is a common question, and typically there is always margin. There's always areas to take packages from the nationals, and even if You don't, even if you're worried about tripping that volume threshold, the savings that you may earn or that you may see are greater than what the volume threshold decrease would be that you'd see from a discount that at one of the national carriers. So, what I've seen in talking with clients is they are very opportunistic. They see they can do the math pretty easily, and of course Keith and his colleagues can help with that. But really, even if you are concerned about tripping a threshold, it's really worth a conversation to do the math and to figure out, where if you can save money. And chances are with better trucks, you will be able to save money, even though you may lose some of that volume discount that you're accustomed to seeing.
With just about every UPS and FedEx pricing agreement, a portion of your discount is based off of how much you're spending with that carrier.
Yeah.
But a couple of things to remember. It's a 52-week rolling average. So if you move volume away, it takes time for that change to impact that calculation. So, looking at your calculation, which is on, FedEx prints it on your invoice, UPS prints it on their invoice, it's pretty easy to find. And then you can look and see how much of a window you have within the band that you're at to help figure out, okay, I'm right on the cusp of falling down. So if I move, then I may lose a discount, or I've got a ton of room. I can move, 20% of my volume with no issue. Kind of understanding that, and then like Josh said, then kind of doing the math to figure out, okay, if I lose a discount point with FedEx or UPS or a discount point and a half or whatever, what is that going to do to my rates versus what I'm going to gain from a cost perspective by switching to a regional carrier, and also from a customer experience, because as Josh was talking about, the customer experience is typically going to be better. A lot of the regional carriers, I believe Better Trucks included, take a picture at delivery. So you've got that available to you. FedEx is starting to get into it, to get into that.
Barely. Yeah.
UPS isn't yet, but again, it's a duopoly. I'm assuming UPS will probably start doing that sometime next year. But that's another thing to consider, is that on that customer experience is having that picture upon delivery, because that can be a challenge sometimes for some shippers that see a lot of claims of people saying it's not there. It really does come back to doing the math and knowing where you're at in those earned discounts in those portfolio tiers to see how much room you have, and then remembering that it is a 52-week rolling average, and it does take time for that to for those changes to play through.
Keith, as you think about 2023, what are some of the headwinds and the tailwinds that you see affecting or impacting shippers?
All right, tailwinds. Kind of a couple that come to mind. I do feel like, and the numbers are bearing that out, kind of what we've been seeing of late. There is capacity, across the network, so it's going to be a little bit easier to move packages, regardless of what carrier you're using. So I think that's going to help shippers. We aren't going to see as many issues around not having trucks available or being capped or things like that. And then, like we've been talking about, the regional carriers are just going to continue to emerge. There are other options besides UPS and FedEx, and there have been more and more that have come on over the last couple of years. And I think as shippers start to really feel the pain of the 6.9% rate increase, they'll start to explore even a little bit more. Like, okay, who else is out there? How can I do this for a little bit cheaper, or how can I do this a little bit faster, or whatever? So from the tailwind side, I think those are a couple of things. Headwinds, it's still UPS and FedEx. They're great companies, but the rates of those rate increases aren't going away. And then we've got this specter of a possible UPS strike at the end of July kind of looming over things.
We've had that off and on for 3 decades. Yeah.
So who knows what's going to happen there, but as things get closer, shippers will start to worry a little bit more. So if you do feel like it's a concern, you've got all your volume tied up with UPS, making sure that you've got a relationship with your FedEx rep, or any of the other, or finding a regional carrier that can help, or whatever, just having options so that if something happens on the UPS side, that you're not stuck. So I know things got really out of hand, when that last strike occurred.
I think to Keith's point, capacity is available now. And so what does it become? It becomes price, it becomes time in transit, and it becomes customer experience. And so I think that from a customer experience point, as we've talked about, I think there's a ton of upside to using better trucks and the regional model. And I think one of the other things that you talked about transportation managers and some of their concern. One of those, that we hear regularly is kind of around integration and, how hard will it be to print labels, to do the work to make sure that tracking is set up. I think that, speaking from our perspective, we've done a lot of the integrations. It's very easy to print a label. We have, leading technology that makes it, almost seamless and very, very short amount of time you can get up and running to connect to our system, either with API or through some of the label aggregators out there that we're all part of, and also some of those that do tracking. And so, I like to tell customers, we can really start printing labels for you tomorrow. We've done that with a few customers. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer if the client's a little bit larger. But that's part of the opportunities that are in the field right now. And so I think that for 2023, again, the customer experience and the increased use of technology is really can be a differentiator.
So thank you both. Josh, it's always good to see you, and Keith, it's been amazing to meet you.
Thanks so much, Denise. Thanks, Keith.